I never meant to fall for her, the woman who smiled like she'd seen every version of heartbreak and still chose to be kind. But every time she looked at me, the years between us disappeared, and all that remained was the way she made silence feel like home. The story begins quietly, with rain tapping against windows and the faint scent of paper filling the air. The kind of day that makes the world feel paused. The narrator, a 25-year-old writer named Eli, finds himself once again in the town's small public library. He tells himself he's there to write, but the truth is gentler and harder to admit. He's there because of her. Elena, the librarian, is unlike anyone he's known. Around 43, she carries a grace that feels timeless, calm, self-assured, yet tinged with a quiet sadness. She doesn't chase attention. It simply gathers around her. The light catches the faint silver at her temples, and it suits her, as if time itself respects her presence. Eli first notices her on a rainy afternoon much like this one. He's seated at a wooden table near the window, trying to string words together for a story he no longer believes in. His mind drifts until a soft voice interrupts his thoughts. "You dropped this." He looks up to see Elena holding out a pen he hadn't realized had rolled off his desk. The simple gesture feels oddly intimate. Her smile is warm, not the kind that invites but the kind that understands. It lingers just a second too long, enough for him to feel it settle somewhere deep. He thanks her awkwardly, and she laughs. A low, melodic sound that seems to brighten even the dim corners of the room. That's when Eli notices the smallest details. The scent of jasmine as she leans closer to place the pen in his hand, the faint ink stain on her thumb, the rhythm of her breathing when she reads. She feels real in a way the world outside doesn't anymore. As the hours pass, he keeps stealing glances at her, at how she tucks a loose strand of hair behind her ear, how her fingers move across the pages she sorts, how she hums softly under her breath when she thinks no one's listening. She moves through the silence as if she belongs to it. When the rain finally stops, the library grows dim. The clock's soft ticking marks the end of the day. Elena begins closing the blinds, her movements unhurried. Eli stands to leave, but before walking out, he glances back, and she catches him looking. That same small smile returns, lighting her face just enough to undo something inside him. He walks home under gray skies, the streets slick with rain, his notebook heavy and empty in his bag. But there's a quiet shift within him, the kind that happens when something unexplainable takes root. He realizes he's smiling, not because of anything he wrote, but because of someone he barely knows. It was just a smile, he reflects, but it stayed with me longer than the rain. That's where the story begins. Not with love, not even with hope, but with a smile that refuses to leave his mind. Eli starts visiting the library more often, convincing himself it's about routine. The quiet, the atmosphere, the books. But deep down, he knows it's because of Elena. There's something about her presence that feels like the first breath after a long silence. Like she steadies the world around her without trying. The days fall into a rhythm. He arrives each afternoon with his notebook and laptop, always choosing the same corner table near the window. Elena pretends not to notice, yet he catches the flicker of recognition in her eyes when he walks in, the soft lift of her lips, the way her voice subtly warms when she greets him. At first, their exchanges are brief. "Good afternoon. How's the writing? You like the same seat, I see." But over time, these small exchanges bloom into real conversations, the kind that linger even after the words fade. They talk about books. She prefers the old ones with cracked spines and uneven pages, the ones that smell of dust and memory. He tells her he's trying to write a story but keeps getting lost halfway through. She teases him gently, saying, "Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just not ready to be found yet." It's a strange thing, the way she speaks. Every line sounds like it carries a lifetime behind it, as if her wisdom has been quietly earned. Sometimes, when the library grows quiet and sunlight drips through the blinds, they share those long silences that don't feel empty. She'll be shelving books while he pretends to type but mostly just watches her. The way she stands on her toes to reach a high shelf, the way her hair catches the light. There are subtle moments, unspoken yet charged. the brush of their hands when she passes him a book, the soft pause when their eyes meet and neither looks away right away, her laughter, warm and low, filling the spaces between their words. Eli begins to notice her habits, how she tilts her head when she's curious, how she always wipes the counter even when it's already clean, how her smile fades for just a heartbeat when she thinks no one's watching. It's that fleeting sadness that draws him most. One afternoon, as he returns a novel, she leans against the counter and asks softly, "Why do you always look like you're waiting for something?" He freezes, unsure how to respond. Because she's right, he is waiting. For what, he doesn't know. Maybe for something he shouldn't be hoping for. He shrugs, trying to hide the truth behind a faint smile. "Maybe I'm waiting for a good ending," he says lightly. Elena studies him, her gaze gentle but unguarded. Then she smiles again. That same tender, knowing smile that started it all. "Sometimes," she replies, "the middle is the best part." And just like that, she walks away, leaving him with more questions than answers, and a heart that beats a little louder than before. The sky darkens early that evening, heavy with clouds that promise a storm. The air smells of rain before it even starts. Eli stays late at the library, pretending to work but really just avoiding the empty apartment that waits for him. He's the last visitor there, and Elena is behind the counter, sorting the day's returns with her usual quiet focus. The first crack of thunder startles them both. A heartbeat later, the rain comes down hard, thick, relentless sheets that blur the windows and swallow the sound of everything else. The lights flicker. Elena looks up, sighs softly, and says, "You'd better wait it out a while. Roads get bad when it rains like this." There's a warmth in her voice, gentle authority, the kind that leaves no room for argument. Eli nods and sits back down, but when the power cuts out completely, he hears her laugh quietly in the dark. "Well," she says, "looks like we're keeping each other company." They find candles in the librarian's drawer and light a few. The soft glow paints the room in amber tones, the kind that flatten distance and make every shadow feel personal. The rain drums steadily against the windows. The world outside ceases to exist. Eli offers to make coffee. The small machine in the staff room still works. Elena accepts, and for the first time, they sit together not as librarian and visitor, but as two people caught in the same moment. The conversation drifts easily at first, about books, weather, the town's quiet charm, but slowly it deepens. She talks about moving here years ago, after her husband left, how she wanted a simpler life. He listens, sensing that every word costs her a little courage. When she asks about his writing, he admits he hasn't finished anything in months. "Maybe I'm afraid of what the ending will be," he confesses. She looks at him through the candlelight, eyes reflecting the flicker of the flame. "Maybe it's not the ending you're afraid of," she says softly. "Maybe it's the part where something finally begins." The air shifts not from what's said, but what isn't. Their knees brush lightly beneath the table. Neither of them moves. The silence hums with something new, something fragile. Eli feels his heartbeat in his fingertips, every breath louder than it should be. Outside, the thunder rolls again. The candle trembles. Elena glances at the window, then back at him. For a moment, she seems about to say something, but stops. Instead, she smiles, that same soft smile that started everything, and says, "It's late. You'll catch cold walking home." When the lights finally flicker back to life, she stands to leave, pausing at the door. "Thank you for the company," she murmurs. Her hand lingers on the doorknob, her eyes finding his one last time. After she's gone, Eli sits in the glow of the returned light, coffee gone cold, storm still raging outside. He whispers to no one. The days after the storm feel strangely quiet. Eli still goes to the library, still sits at his corner table, but something has changed. Not between them exactly, but within him. That night had awakened a stillness that wasn't entirely peaceful. Every glance, every word since then carries a weight he can't name. Elena seems different too. She's still kind, still composed, but there's a new carefulness in her tone. She avoids the long conversations they used to share, busying herself with other patrons or errands behind the counter. The warmth is there, but it's measured, like she's reminding herself of a boundary that shouldn't be crossed. Eli notices. He feels the shift every time her eyes flick away too quickly, every time her smile ends before it reaches her eyes. It hurts in a way that surprises him. He tries to write about it, to make sense of the distance growing where closeness once was, but the words fall apart before they reach the page. A week passes like that. Brief exchanges, polite smiles, silence filling in the spaces where laughter used to live. One afternoon, unable to take it anymore, Eli walks to the small cafe down the street where he knows she goes after work. He doesn't plan to talk to her, just to see her outside the walls of the library. But when she spots him through the rain-fogged window, she waves him in with a hesitant smile. Inside, the world feels softer. The smell of coffee, the quiet murmur of strangers, the glow of hanging lights. She's seated by the window, her hair slightly damp from the drizzle, a half-read novel beside her mug. He joins her, and for a moment, neither speaks. "You've been distant," he says finally, his voice low, unsure. Elena exhales, eyes on the steam rising from her cup. "I thought maybe we needed a little space," she answers. Sometimes when something feels too easy, it's only because we're ignoring how complicated it really is. Her honesty cuts through him, gentle but sharp. He wants to tell her that he's not confused, that he's not chasing anything inappropriate, that he just feels something he can't ignore. But the words won't come out right. As they talk, he notices her hand resting near her cup. Slender fingers, a faint pale line circling her ring finger. No jewelry, just the memory of it. He realizes he's never asked about her past, never dared. The absence of the ring speaks for itself, but he doesn't pry. When she finally looks at him, her expression is layered. Regret, warmth, something unspoken beneath it all. "You remind me of when everything still felt possible," she says softly. "And that scares me." Eli doesn't know how to respond. He just nods, swallowing the ache rising in his chest. She finishes her coffee, leaves payment on the table, and stands. "Take care, Eli," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. As she walks away, he catches that same smile. Faint, tender, and heartbreaking in its restraint. "She smiled again," he murmurs as the door closes behind her. But this time, it hurt. The rain returns a week later, softer this time. More of a whisper than a storm. Eli sits in his apartment, staring at a half-finished story on his laptop. The words refuse to come. Everything feels suspended. Unfinished sentences, unspoken feelings, unanswered questions. Finally, almost on impulse, he grabs his coat and walks out into the drizzle, heading toward the library even though it's nearly closing time. When he arrives, the lights are dim. Only a single lamp glows behind the counter, where Elena is tidying up. She looks up in surprise when he walks in, but she doesn't scold him. Instead, there's a quiet in her eyes, a tired kind of calm. "We're closing soon," she says softly. "I know," he replies, his voice almost breaking the silence. "I just needed to see you." The words hang there, fragile and honest. She hesitates, then sets down the stack of books in her hands. For a long moment, the only sound is the rain tapping against the glass. Finally, she sighs and says, "Come on in. I'll pretend I didn't hear that." They sit at a corner table, the same one where he always writes, the same one where all of this began. She makes them tea, and the steam curls gently between them, filling the empty air with something tender. Neither of them rushes to speak. The silence feels fuller than words. When Elena finally breaks it, her voice is quiet but sure. "You shouldn't be here, Eli. People might misunderstand." He smiles faintly, looking down at his hands. "People already misunderstand most things." Then, after a pause, he adds, "I just wanted to talk. Really talk." Something softens in her face. She nods as if giving him permission. And so he does, about how his writing has stalled, how the loneliness of this town had started to hollow him out, and how meeting her felt like being reminded of everything human again. I haven't written a word that wasn't about you, he admits quietly. Elena looks at him, her eyes glistening with emotion she tries to hide. Eli, she whispers, but he cuts in, not pleading, just honest. I know it's wrong to want something that can't exist, but you've become the only real thing in my days. I don't know how to unfeel that. For a long moment, she says nothing. Then she reaches across the table, her hand resting over his. Her touch is steady, warm, grounding. The kind of touch that speaks more truth than speech ever could. You remind me, she says softly, what it felt like to be seen. Her voice trembles on the last word. They stay like that, hand in hand, hearts open but silent. The rain outside grows heavier, matching the ache inside both of them. When she finally stands to leave, she gives his hand one last gentle squeeze before letting go. At the door, she turns back once, her voice almost a whisper lost to the rain. Don't stop writing, Eli. Some stories are meant to hurt. And then she's gone, leaving him alone beneath the library's dim lights. His hand still tingling with the memory of hers. A week passes in quiet absence. No messages. No glimpses of her through the library windows. Eli doesn't know whether to wait or to forget. The days blur together. Mornings lost in silence. Nights filled with what-ifs. Writing feels impossible. Every word circles back to her. Then one afternoon, he visits the library again. He tells himself he's only returning a book, nothing more. The librarian at the counter, a younger woman filling in for Elena, smiles politely as she takes the novel from his hands. But as she opens it, something slips out. A folded envelope with his name written in careful cursive. His breath catches. The handwriting is unmistakable. He takes the letter outside, finding a quiet bench beneath the shade of an old oak. The world seems to slow as he unfolds the paper. The ink is soft, almost faded, like she'd written it days ago but couldn't bring herself to give it sooner. Eli, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't find the right way to say goodbye face to face. I've thought a lot about what we shared, the talks, the silences, the rain, the warmth I hadn't felt in years. You reminded me that connection doesn't ask for permission. It just happens. And maybe that's why it frightened me so much. Eli pauses, his throat tightening. He can almost hear her voice through the words. Calm, steady, but full of quiet emotion. There are parts of me I haven't learned how to forgive yet. The parts that settled for safety, that forgot how to feel anything beyond routine. You reminded me of the woman I used to be. Curious, alive, hopeful. But you also made me realize how far I've drifted from her. Please understand, this isn't about age or fear or what people might say. It's about timing. You're standing at the beginning of something, and I'm still finding my way out of the middle. He grips the page tighter, eyes burning. The words ache with tenderness, not rejection. Every sentence carries the softness of someone who loves too carefully to let it become a wound. You once said you were waiting for a good ending. I think this might be mine, quiet, honest, unfinished. You deserve beginnings, Eli. Stories that don't end in letters like this one. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Elena, the final words are underlined faintly, as if her hand trembled while writing them. Eli folds the letter back into the envelope and sits in silence. Around him, the town moves gently. Children laughing in the distance. Wind rustling the leaves. Life continuing as if nothing has changed. But for him, everything has. He doesn't cry. Instead, he closes his eyes and breathes deeply, letting the ache settle into something softer. Gratitude. Maybe. He stands, looks toward the library's tall windows, and whispers to the wind. Every time she smiled, I forgot the age between us. And as the breeze carries her scent, faint jasmine and rain, he finally understands. She didn't vanish from his life. She just left him something to carry forward, the memory of being truly seen. Months pass. Seasons turn quietly, as if the world is trying to move him along with it. The leaves fall, the air cools, and Eli slowly rediscovers a rhythm that doesn't hurt quite as much. But she's never far from his thoughts. Sometimes he still visits the bench where he read her letter, Sometimes he finds her handwriting slipping into the margins of his notebooks, almost like she's still guiding him, gently, from a distance. His writing begins to flow again. What once felt impossible now feels necessary. Each story he writes carries a trace of her voice, her calm wisdom, her laughter echoing between the lines. Eventually, he finishes a manuscript, his first in years, a collection of quiet reflections about love, timing, and the people who change us without staying. When the book is published, he doesn't expect much. The small, personal, just words he needed to release. But on the dedication page, there's a single line, "For the woman who reminded me how to feel again." The first copies arrive on a bright afternoon. Eli slips one into his bag and walks to the library. The same building, the same scent of old paper and polished wood. But everything feels different now, softer somehow. Behind the counter stands Elena. She's back. Her hair is shorter, her face a little tired but radiant in a way he's never seen before. Peaceful, present. For a moment, neither speaks. Then she smiles, that familiar, gentle curve that once unraveled him completely. "You've been away," she says. "So have you," he replies. She laughs quietly, her eyes shining with something between pride and nostalgia. He places the book on the counter, open to the dedication page. Her hand trembles slightly as she reads it, then closes the cover slowly, pressing her palm against it. "You finished it," she says softly. He nods. "Because of you." They talk for a while. Small things at first, the weather, the quietness of the town, the way time moves when you stop chasing it. The tension that once filled the air between them has melted into something gentler. A calm understanding. They're not who they were months ago. The ache has turned into something almost beautiful. As the afternoon sun filters through the windows, Eli helps her stack a few new arrivals. Their shoulders brush once, briefly. It feels natural now, no longer electric or forbidden, just familiar. Two people who found each other in the right way, even if not at the right time. When he leaves, she walks him to the door. The silence between them is soft, warm, complete. "You know," she says, smiling, "you never did return that last book." He smiles back, shaking his head. "Some stories you don't return," he says. "You just carry them with you." She laughs, and for a heartbeat, he's back in that first rainy afternoon, the moment that started everything. "She smiled again," he says in voiceover as if narrating to himself. "And for the first time, I didn't forget the age between us. I simply didn't care." And as he walks away, the light behind him fades into gold. The soft, final warmth of a love that didn't have to last forever to mean forever.